So, hello, fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 6455463728 and Mom Hate on the No Chaser podcast. Kind of disappointed that that's where they kind of decided to stop. As usual, I am Earthling, yada yada yada, and I've lost money in the stock market. I have a couple degrees. I got a scholarship a long time ago. I've traveled a bit. I've done some life-saving courses, and that's it for me. Anyway, so I was watching the No Chaser podcast with Timothy Chattarangsu, or also known as Timothy De La Ghetto, and it was him and Ricky Shucks and Nikki Blades, and I think it's David Ho. They were on there, and I think they've decided that they don't really need to have guests per se. I guess you could call David Ho like a guest, except that he seems to have been on at least two back-to-back podcasts. So I don't think he's like a guest starring kind of thing, but not really like a guest kind of thing. Anyway, they were talking about some horrible upbringing stories. I guess Timothy really didn't have too much of a horrible upbringing, being an only child. And, a lot of them talked about, well, David Ho, I hope that is his name. I have to do a piece on the fact that Korean parents really, really suck. And, well, I'm paraphrasing what he would have said, because he had some really sad experiences with his parents, and from a Western perspective, it would have been a really dysfunctional family life, which seems to be standard fare for Korea. Which probably explains why there are often these scandals that happen when a rich person just goes crazy on someone who is, below them in terms of serving them or anything like that. Like this heiress, I believe, who threw a tantrum because one of the air service people gave her peanuts in a bag, and she didn't open the peanuts and put it in another container, and she went crazy. It can be expected if it's standard fare, and you know that Korean parents are the worst. Well, obviously when you get into a position of power, you are not going to be nice either. Anyway, he had some horrible stories. I may go into them, but Timothy, as an only child, he seemed to be well liked by both of his parents, and especially as he's Thai. Maybe Thai people, at least according to him, are funny, easygoing people. Ricky Shucks did not have like a lot of stories. He was saying that he didn't have any funny stories, so I don't know. Maybe they were just, he didn't know how to put them into to add humor to them. Maybe they were just bad stories, period. And Nikki Blades had her, as she called it, poly heritage, where she got beat, as she said, by her dad a lot, and I guess other people while she was growing up. But all that said, what I found to be kind of just unfortunate at towards the end of the podcast was that David Ho was like, yeah, my dad treated me horribly because of my mom. I'm like, you realize one of your stories is about you threatening to call Child Protective Services on your father for abusing you. Your father goes and gets a lead pipe and swings at you. You duck, and he destroys something behind you, and then says that's child abuse. that's one of your stories. What exactly do you think that your mother did that prompted that reaction to, or for your father to actually do that? The worst story that he has stories about how his mom was insensitive, but the worst story that I can think of that he had about something that his mom did to him was that I guess he got his heart broken. He was crying by himself, and his mother found him in his room crying, and she said to him in a quiet voice, "Only B words cry alone." And then she got up and left. Which, you know, if that was a story about a guy, I mean a woman, like Davina Ho, that would just be a horrible, horrible story. But everybody hates Chris, Malcolm in the Middle. We mock men in pain, and then we wonder why domestic violence still occurs. Anyway, because people, we're computers, we're big computers, so I don't know. You have a certain input. Why is the output going to be different? But yeah, I mean, he mentions the stuff where his dad swung a lead pipe at him. He mentions the fact where his father didn't tell him about some stuff that was in the yard when he went out in the pitch black to put out the garbage, I think it was. And then he falls over and completely, horribly bruises up his arms and everything. And then his father tells him, basically, you should open your eyes. You should open your eyes and see. And he's like, well, it was pitch black outside, which kind of sounds no sympathy. What did his mother do to his father, for his father to have that kind of attitude towards him? Yeah. And then on Timothy Chantarangsu, on his part, like one of his last stories about his mother was the fact that I guess he would have, did he say something in his dad's defense? And his mother basically was in Thailand at the time and just totally stopped communicating with him altogether, even to the point where he was supposed to pick her up, and she would not communicate with him directly to give him information about when to pick her up. So, but he didn't really exactly seem too like anti-mom with respect to that. But then Ricky Shucks is like, how okay, he's a negative person, he says, maybe in jest, but then he's like, I'm not going to have this attitude, where I'm going to spoil everybody else's day because of something that's wrong with me. Why are moms like that? No. And I was like, that I don't know, but that just, I don't know what attitude his mom had. Maybe he's right. But and then, Nikki Blades, she's like, okay, she didn't really have much of a relationship with her mother for the longest period of time, but she did, and loves and has a strong relationship with her father, even though he would ask her, like, how do you want to get hit? Open hand slap, closed hand, or whatever. So you basically had a choice of how you wanted to get hit. And she would choose, she didn't want the open-handed slap because that would sting. And then she didn't want some other one with a small surface area because that would hurt too much. And, she just had like stories of her father's attitude towards her. That I guess most people would accept that, he didn't want her to date. And he put a lot of pressure on her specifically. And she's like, it took years to develop a good relationship with her father, but she always felt closer to her father in spite of all of this. She does have a good relationship with her mother now, but she was kind of like, Mom, why are you letting me go through this kind of thing? That was her attitude before. And how is it that, I think her younger sibling, I don't know if it was the middle or the last younger sibling, didn't have to go through that because she spent more time with the mother. So it just, listen, I have not many stories. I can understand why people would take an attitude like, oh my God, my mom, my mother's, and yeah, I have issues with my mom many, many times throughout a day. Differences of opinion that run the gamut from, cooking, taking care of my uncle, buying things, random topics that my mother would share her opinion on that I would just sometimes say, no, that doesn't make sense, and give reasons for, and I'm doing that, for years, and there's no change in her perspective on these things. But all of that said, at the end of the day, my mother still raised me. She didn't leave me to grow up with my father. I don't know how the hell that would have worked out. She kind of went with the flow with respect to my father not being too present in my life, which I'm kind of okay with. I mean, I'm upset with it because my father would make a promise and then he wouldn't keep it. But then seeing how his other kids turned out with him in their life, yeah, it's fine. It's kind of fine that he wasn't around that much. My life definitely would not have been as stable. So it wasn't so great to listen to these guys. Just admittedly, like I said, Nikki Blades, she's like, I've resolved my issues with my mom, kind of, and what's his name? Well, Timothy was like, well, I guess that isn't most of the time, but he seems to be a lot closer to it with his father. David Ho does not, he seems to either in jest or maybe half seriously be like, yeah, my mom's a problem, when he has suffered so much at the hands of his of his dad. And then, what's his name? Ricky Shucks. I can see why women sometimes have an attitude, because it's a lot easier to just have an attitude than, passive aggressive kind of thing. Passive aggressive doesn't get you hit in the mouth. If you're passively aggressive, then that means you're not actively aggressive, meaning it's probably not going to be a big fight. I think passively aggressive is great, honestly. There are many good situations where you need to show that you have a difference of opinion, a strong difference of opinion, to show the other person that, hey, if you do X, I'm going to do Y. And you need to do that without it resulting in any kind of blows being thrown or threats being made. You just kind of have to do that sometimes. And people say that about women as if it's like, oh my God, passive aggressive is, yeah, I don't want to end up in the hospital because I need to be aggressive or stand up or whatever. So yeah, passive aggressive, I think it kind of works. All in all, yeah, it was just a little bit sad to see everybody pile up on mom. Seeing as mom oftentimes doesn't have a lot of options, I mean, for example, in the example that David Ho gave, he's like, well, his mom asked for a huge amount of vinegar. His dad goes back, buys a small size of vinegar, and his mom complains. And he's like, why are you complaining, kind of thing. And I'm like, y'all like kimchi, right? When she can't make the kimchi, you're going to complain. But you don't see that she should complain about the guy who should know better when it comes to what's required and the amount of vinegar she's going to need for the kimchi. You're on your dad's side about stupidity. Anyway, that's just me. So feel free to like, subscribe, do none of those things. That's it for me. Have a good one. Peace.